Awesome. So welcome to another delivery orchestration demo. This is our EMEA Americas scheduled one. Hey, Myra, just getting going. So Alessia, you've got the first item.
Sure. Yeah, just put here a list of the action items from last week so that we can check status and see what happened. So, okay, Amy, yes, the first one was for Graham, and seems that you did that.
Yeah, I think I've done this. Let me just quickly show you what I did. Because I think I've Cool. So I just I think we had it pretty much on here. We already had this step, which was create the git tag. I've just added in here. This was the pretty much the sort of essential part of the other issue that I have closed out and moved into here, which was to update, to basically specifically update the tag in the GitLab pages repo, and we want that to be the SHA.
I think that the thing is down below in the definition of done, the second item.
Yes, that's right. That was the other bit. That was the other step I've moved in, right? So
yeah, and do you say that you moved in also something in the first one?
So we already had a step which was create the git tag, and the other issue had this piece in it.
Okay.
Which, I mean, is the same. I think it was just the other issue perhaps had a slightly more
what I'm
specific
thinking
on what the tag was, right?
Yeah, no, what I'm thinking, I mean, it's fine. What I'm thinking is that this one these are the steps in the to-do, and then the definition of done was more about are those things completed part of what we've done?
And I see what you mean. Yeah, they're like the testing. Yeah.
I would say that on the to-do, we will have something on the same level of the first, which is add a class, blah, blah, blah. And it's a line below, which is something like update the class. There's the public release for GitLab, bumping the GitLab pages version.
Okay.
Yeah, but
completely move this whole line, or would we still want to? We'd still create the git tag in this one.
That's supposed to be there. That's okay.
Okay.
That's in the right position, in the right spot. This is basically all the things that we have right now are things we do in pages, and this is one part of it. Then the second part is that as we reach the GitLab repo, which we do after the components, we should make sure that the things we did above are reflected in the
yeah, okay, that makes sense.
In GitLab repo itself. I mean, I can add the line myself. I mean,
okay, yeah, that'd be great. One thing that you made me think as you were talking through that stuff about the definition of done is, does this overlap with the rollout plan? Because some of these things, for example, we got tagging a patch release, tagging a security release, they feel very much like, are we going to be able to test those, I guess, as part of this issue, or are they part, or should we scope this issue to be, we've done the work, we've checked the immediate stuff, and I think we already have a rollout issue.
There is a rollout issue, but I think is more about, let me double check very quickly. Yeah, I was thinking if the rollout is about making sure, how do we make sure that the new way of tagging correctly interacts with the old one? So when we switch from version 1.6.7 to 15.3.4, how do we make sure that the next security release will act correctly on the previous one that were not in the thing? But...
Go ahead, Myra.
Yeah, thanks. I was checking the list of the definition of done, and I didn't see tracking on the environments. And that is something that we also do when we tag a patch release or a monthly release or a security release. And the tracking is also like spread for Italy, for example. Is that something that we are also thinking of doing for pages?
It's there. I know because I've wrote an alternative to that today.
Is it this one?
2582.
I know we got this one.
5,
Yeah.
8.
This is the original one that Graham wrote.
And then you've got your counter. It's 260.
And yeah, 2607 is the alternative. But yeah, you're right. So that thing is important. One of the two things has to be done.
One of the items on the agenda down below is actually so we can discuss which one we want to pick. So it sounds like that issue that we were just talking about is fine. And that is the issue which basically does all the changes to the tagging, and we also do all the testing that those tagging changes are working correctly.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't in Graham's mind when he wrote that, but I was my idea of reading that is something like we can call this done when we actually have gone through all those type of releases and are sure that they are working, which is a way of looking at this. The other one could be just, we've done the work, we say it's done, and then we open follow-up issues for bug if they don't work with certain.
I think it's worth, I agree, and I chatted about it, and I think, I mean, the only downside is we potentially have an issue open for a month, but I think getting it all in one go and making sure we have the test done is probably worth that overhead. Cool. Okay, great. Do you want me to have another go at editing that, Alessio, or is it quicker for you to?
I can do that. No problem. I will just.
Thank you.
You're welcome. No problem. So there was a action item B. I'm not sure what was that. So I think, and this is why I mentioned before about rollout, that this is 2601. But yeah, there was no description, just title, and I wrote this. A little comment there. We can just do this manual one time and don't bother with it. But I don't know. So this is probably a question to Graham or to you, Amy, if you remember what we were thinking when we wrote that action item.
Yeah, so this was about the discussion we had around what do we want to do specifically around security releases, but also backports, around the fact that I think there's a fairly big assumption. Well, I think there's an assumption, at least in my head, of versions will change. Yeah. But you may already know that, right? So yeah, okay. Yeah. So this was off the back of the discussion we had about do we just need to expect to support them, or Graham had that idea of going back and actually setting up the branches and the tags and things. So I think it was about
that's the right one. Okay,
great. So I think it's all about that. I don't think we have to decide right now, to be honest, but we should flesh that out.
Okay.
Cool. So maybe I suggest let's come back to that. So it would be good. I think we've spent so much time and energy, I think, on writing issues and analyzing things that actually we probably want to just start getting our hands dirty. So I think let's revisit that one a bit later on.
Okay. Then action item C, issue to verify if pages can be built from a SHA. It's there. And then I had an action item for myself, which was writing an overview of the process for developers. I've done this. I'm guilty because I didn't check. I just asked Graham to review it and forget about it. So today I say, I did something about this. Where is it? And so I'm guilty of not following up with my own actions. So thank you, Amy, for fixing the typos.
Yeah, that's all right. That's all right. Well, Melissa Graham's out, so I was like super keen on this one. What I wanted to check in, I think it looks definitely good enough to be putting in front of developers. So Myra, I don't know if you got all the context on this. We are at the point where we want to double check that the pages maintainers are happy with the changes that will happen as a result of us making this change. So there are some benefits, but there are also some slight downsides or changes that will come when we do this. So we discussed just making sure they were fully aware of like, this is what's actually going to change. And so that's what this MR is about. But one question I had for you, Alessio, is I recall, well, at least in my mind, it felt like we had quite a big conversation about what they would potentially lose. Is it really just that you like the changelog must be the GitLab format, the version must be the GitLab format? And was there also something we talked about, like potentially developers, maybe not pages actually. Was there something about people losing the freedom to cut releases or like tag releases when they wanted to, or is that not an issue?
Yeah, that's they lose control over. Yeah, okay. Now I see what you get. Yeah, so what is that? Yeah, that maybe is not called out explicitly, but because it everywhere it tells you that you cut release when. I mean, you don't cut release. We cut a release when we cut a global release. So there's no room for you for cutting on your own releases. This could be, yeah, we can put them what developers team lose. So it's clear, it's upfront.
I think we should have a like, because I was
Yeah.
like, in my head, I felt like when I read your MR, I was like, oh, this is fine. There's no downside. And I was like, hang on, I remember us talking about this because I remember this. I was feeling like there was a bit of.
Yeah,
I mean, pages, we weren't super worried, right?
It's the first item, right? Because you lose control over the version scheme, it will follow the GitLab product version, which implies that you can't tag.
Right, yeah.
But
okay,
let's put it as an
let's
extra
put it
item,
in it,
which
yeah.
is, yeah, I will not. So yeah, this, given we're talking about this, I think we should not spend words here on explaining that eventually you may be able to run your own RCs.
I mean, fully
that's
agree.
a technical
we
detail
can
that
add
some
that
project
later.
needs.
Yeah.
So.
Agreed.
Okay.
Agreed. I think for this, certainly for the sake of what we're trying to do this quarter with pages and CAS, like that, yeah, let's focus on just what we need and add in stuff later. Cool.
I'm taking a note on the MR so that I do remember.
Great stuff. Awesome. But otherwise, I think it looks good. Do you want to kick off, Alessio, and maybe get that in front of the pages maintainers and actually just see if we can get the kind of thumbs up to go ahead on making this change?
Do we want to do this in the MR, or we want to merge and just open an issue to gather their feedback?
I think we should probably merge, and I mean, you could maybe do the review in the epic on the actual epic, because at least then I guess they can see what the work we're doing, and then if they agree, they can see what we're going to be working on.
Okay.
But yeah, I would say go ahead and merge this in, and then we can use it for multiple approval things.
Okay. So I will edit that line and maybe send it to Myra as well for review. And then if you like what you see, Myra, makes sense for you, you can merge it. Okay.
Cool.
Thank you. Amy, your item is next.
Yes, thank you. I am going to do something similar with the configure team. I want to just make sure that they are also aware of the changes that will come their way from auto deploys. Before I post this, I was going to just stick a comment on the epic and then ping them on there. And I just wanted to check I had all the pieces correct before I wrote something. So just to double check my understanding, when they switch over to auto deploy, we will be basically saying that we're going to automate all the steps on 10 to 17 for. I really hope we've got our diagram right. So we're basically saying that all of these steps down here where they currently open an MR to change the version image on pre-staging and then production, that will all just get automated through our auto deploys
Yeah. So I was muted. Yeah.
Yeah, you muted.
So not exactly. The problem here is pre. I do remember in one of those issue there was a thread studying about how are they using pre. How do they want to do something like this?
Yes.
So no, it will be from 10.5. So let's say removing pre, just GSDG.
So they would still have the option. Like, is that just for free? They'd still have the option to open an MR against pre.
So because they
I see. You mean we would completely lose pre, is what you're actually saying, right? Because it's not part of auto deploy.
Now, what I mean is that now they have a manual process, right? So they are not into managed versioning, which means that they start by cutting a release. They cut the release, then they do pre, they do some tests, then they do staging, and etc., right? What I'm saying is that they are still manual. They cut the release. They can do manual on pre on that release, do whatever test they think it's important in their workflow, and then they just go in. There's nothing after that. They go into the auto deploy flow. They say, I'm confident that the thing that I made and tested on pre is ready for prime time. Then I will do just the bumping on the Rails version. Yeah, where is it? Point number 2, basically, in the preparation. Yeah. And so it kind of reorder everything here.
It reorders it. Okay, fine. Yeah. Do you know what? I'm actually not sure if they test on pre, so I might actually leave that as a separate option and then add that as a follow-up of, do they use pre? I don't think they do. That's where my money is. I don't know this, but that's my gut, just because the pre and staging come together. And I think people more commonly test on staging when they have those things together.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me just capture this then. So we're saying that it's essentially a reorder, right? So manual MR bump for pre needed. What happens if they don't do it on pre? Does that matter that pre ends up on a different version?
I don't
I might have to check with Scabak. That feels like a system problem, right? Okay.
I don't know if we kind of realign pre. Yeah, in theory, we realign pre on RCs. So if the work they are, I don't know if we do this for. I don't think we're doing for CAS. That's the point, right? Because CAS has been outside of everything. So now that we bring in CAS into auto deploy, in theory, we would like to make sure that when we do roll out on pre with the RCs.
Oh, that's a good point, right? If we allow people to do manual testing on pre with an MR, that's potential collision for us on a round release prep, right?
Yep.
Okay, let's see if we can drop that. Feels like once again we need another environment. So anyway, if they want to do that, it's a manual MR bump on pre. But then the next step is step 2. I mean, like 1 and 2, right? They do that. Well, they've done a change. But step 2 to bump the version in Rails, and then it's auto deploy from there on. Is that correct?
Yep. Yeah. There is a step 0, which is they cut their own release.
So they do that at the moment?
Yeah, they do.
Okay.
But they do this in alignment with the product version. So a couple of days before the milestone, they do a release, which has the same version of the monthly release, and they bump everything.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Do we need them to alter that workflow then?
Not on. I mean, it's fine because they
don't make very many changes, right?
Yeah, we will change that when they enroll in managed versioning. And it's already aligned, so there is less changes for them because they already do this. They will just get the benefit of being able to test early in the process, because this is a lot of work. So they do once a month.
Yeah.
And with managed versioning, they can do this how often as they want.
Every day. Great. Okay. Awesome. Cool. Okay. I will give them a ping on the issue. On the epic, and actually double check they are aware of what will happen, and check they're good to go. We're still waiting on the canary for CAS, so this isn't a straight away to get going, but it'd be good to get everyone kind of agreed for when we're ready.
Do we have also some load testing? I mean, what is using CAS on staging to give us confidence?
Yes, no, that's a really good point. So we have two pieces that we need their input in before we can switch on auto deploys for CAS. One is we need their input into what metrics we should be tracking. Skarbek has sort of identified the gaps and has made a suggestion, but ultimately it's up to the stage group to say what we should measure. The other one, yeah, you're right, is the we basically, we don't know anything about their testing. So we need to get some confirmation from them that staging is going to be enough to test their changes. I should actually do that quite quickly, because if the answer to that is no, which it could be, then we may need to get something on the roadmap, like not our roadmap, like quality or the configure roadmap.
Yeah, if I remember, they kind of have their own QA, which is not integrated in GitLab QA. I'm not sure about this, but I think when I was talking with one of the engineers, they mentioned something like this.
Okay, so that might still be fine, because I think registry has the same.
Yeah, that's why I'm not sure if I'm just thinking registry, but we're talking about CAS, or if because it's this, or if they have the same approach, which is still possible.
Yeah, that's a good point. So one of the issues on this epic is you're right, is to figure out what their test is. I'll get that kicked off because actually I have no idea how big that might be. Nothing, or it could be months of work. I have no idea. Awesome. Great. So okay, great. So 3, we touched on this a little earlier, which is about, we've got 2 issues which are sort of for the same problem. I wanted to just discuss these a little bit and see, like, do we know enough to be able to pick one over the other? Or how do we want to progress these things?
So,
I'm sorry, I was reading through to those issues. And I understand the one from Graham's, which is basically reusing what we have on GitLab Pages repository, but I'm not clear on yours one, Alessio. Do you mind explaining that a little bit, please?
I was going actually to ask if the description is understandable. So, yeah, so the thing is that we do track deployments for some components. Now, I would say projects, right? Because not only components, we track packages, we track the Rails application. So some projects are tracked. So when we do...
I track all of the ones that are used with auto-deploy or release, right? Like Omnibus, Gitali, all of them are tracked.
Yeah, but it's not because they are part of auto-deploy, but because we went there and implemented. So
exactly.
So that's the thing, right? So for instance, Pages is part of auto-deploy in the sense that when we install an auto-deploy package, we install the Pages version that is in there. But we don't track the deployment on the Pages project. Okay, and this is what Graham is saying. We should go there and implement this. But the main use case of this type of integration is merge request tracking. So knowing which merge request landed on a given environment. Okay, this is the other one, is that when we track deployments at the same time, we also do a central tracking on release metadata. When we track a deployment for the commit that introduced the version description. So the metadata itself is on a single commit, and that commit got tracked so that we know this is what we call the product version. So there are many classes on release tools, all related to auto-deploy, that works on product version. So given a coordinated pipeline tag, it can tell you what's inside on every component. Also those that we are not yet tracking with the other information, right? Because it goes from release metadata, fetches the metadata itself, and can inspect the content of the file. So that thing already can give us, can tell us which version of pages is inside of an auto-deploy package. So what my suggestion there as an alternative is that instead of re-implementing for every component, because we have this logic where Gitali start first, so it has to figure out the last deployment, then we go on GitLab and we do the same, then we do Omnibus, same again. My proposal here is that we remove that thing and we just stick with the component version. So upfront, when we tag a release, we say, release metadata, tell me the last production deployment. We get that single description file, and from that, we can infer the version of everything that's inside.
What would that mean? How would the environments page look if we switched everything over to that style? Like if I just cared about pages, for example, and I went to the environments page, what would it look like?
So that's the point, right? So this is not about removing that thing. It's just about not making it a hard requirement for managed versioning. So that's the point, right? So we should still do that because it's important. It gives a lot of visibility to developers.
Different use case, right?
But it's a different use case. I would put them more in the auto deploy rollout bucket if we want to, or as a completely independent thing.
I think independent deploy, right? Because what I was going to follow up and say is in the future, when we want stage groups to care much more about their independent deployments, I'm hoping environments page will be the place they can lean on. So yeah, maybe we just push that down. Okay.
So that was my idea on that, because there is the base level, which is the one that is already documented in our documentation, just tell you if release tools needs to be aware of a component, there are certain things that you have to implement. And one of this is making sure that when we tag auto deploy, we are aware that you have a version file inside GitLab itself, and we track this on release metadata. So this is kind of, it's the entry point. Everyone should have it. We know that registry don't, but because there's no file there, it's specific to registry, but it's kind of one less thing to do when we enroll.
Cool. I think that makes sense then. So if we are focusing on the find last component deployment from release metadata, is this something that, like, do we need to wait basically for pages, or is it something which we could actually just start working on?
That's a refactoring. I'm saying new features versus refactoring, right? So this is something we can do right before, and we can also run some comparison.
Okay.
Just dry run of the tagging with, say, feature flag this new implementation, and see, will the new and the old one have generated the same stable branches?
Cool. Okay, that makes sense then. Cool. Okay, great. So are there any other discussion things people want to go through, or should we? The other thing I was going to spend some time on was just figure out next steps for these epics, so we kind of know what we're focusing on for the next week. But are there other things anyone wants to discuss? Yep. Okay, awesome. So I know I have an action first off, which is to, I guess, spend some time with configure, working out state of CAS auto deploy. And Alessia, I'm going to give you the super important project, task, hopefully it's not a project, of check-in with pages maintainer about state of managed versions. Cool. Yeah. So we've got a bunch of I think we've got a bunch of issues that look like they are ready to go. In fact, Myra, I know you've got an outstanding task. Do you want to just as your first task as you come out of release management, just wrap up the Gitterly analysis issue? Because then I think we're in a pretty good state with that one.
Absolutely, yes.
Perfect, thank you.
There are also some easy tasks, call them easy, which are just the one verifying that we can build pages for SHA. So this is something that is kind of easy to do. We just need to figure out how to do with the documentation of both Omnibus and CNG. But then if the answer is no, then there is something that we need to put on the roadmap.
Yeah, it would be really good to know the answers to that. So it certainly seems like the can we build pages from SHA and this metadata stuff, these two feel like the two kind of really useful things as next steps, in my view at least. Yeah, cool. Myra, I know you've got quite limited time before you head out in October. Do you want to Phil, please do time box the Gitterly analysis issue, get it to the stage where we have enough, but it doesn't need to be perfect. So get it good enough and then we can just say it's done. But is there do you want to have a go at doing the testing pages building from SHA? Hopefully that's something that fits with the time you have next week, and then we kind of have the answer and we can go from there.
I can try to start it, yes, but I'm not sure if I will have enough time. Sorry, I'm just kind of unfamiliar with the context and the change, but yeah, I can give it a try.
Okay, awesome. Because I think
it's more about testing the thing, right? So those projects, you would just see the projects. Those projects have the documentation to say, if I need to build something which is specific to my use case, say changing a single component, what should I do? And they tell you, we run a pipeline with those parameters. So it's just a matter of doing this, and then checking the gives you an image at the end. So you download the image, you run it on Docker. And if there is the right thing inside, done. So it's just, we can close it and say it's done. If not, then it will be another story. But there's no, I mean, at least we know that we have to schedule these things in. It will be another issue. So.
Okay.
Awesome. Sounds good. Sounds good. And then Alessio, if you get time, that gives you the metadata thing, or Graham is back on Tuesday. I don't know if he's going to be able to do the metadata stuff. Is he going to need to know a lot of Ruby?
Yeah. It's a backend task. Definitely.
Do we have another, that one feels bigger, which is why I'm kind of not sending it your way, Myra. That does feel like more than 4 days of work. Unless you disagree and you'd rather tackle that one, and then Graham could test the build from SHA.
Why don't you let me just have a look at the issue and see what requires, and then, at least I can also start it. Yeah.
Okay, good. It feels like those are two super useful pieces, and then hopefully we'll get a thumbs up from configure and from pages maintainers, and then we can kick off. I think it gives us a bunch of other issues that we can kick off then. I'm also hopeful that the CAS Canary isn't too far away. Jenny's making great progress there. So there will be some delays on the CAS auto deploy, because the next step once we have a Canary is we do need configure to make some changes in order to support the Canary inside CAS. So there will be some tasks that they will need to find time to schedule. So I don't know what their capacity looks like right now. Cool. Okay, great stuff. Is there anything else that we should go through? No? Okay, awesome. Thank you very much for the discussions. Yeah, shout if you need stuff. We can continue async, and we'll see how things go.